Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Tales of Herding God Part 231 based on novel. So let's start. Sakura Buddha walked forward expressionlessly and said, "No matter if you want to fight or not, even if you find the four elements are vanity, other people will still want to get rid of you. Not only will they want to get rid of your disciples, your attainments, your life, your tradition, but they would also step on you under their feet, and you will never make a comeback. In that case, why aren't you fighting? Senior brother, you can stay here in your grand dreams, but I can't. Are you going to impart your technique or not?" His voice was deafening, but his voice didn't travel out of the monastery. It only reverberated around this monastery. Faint sighs rang out. The path and the sweeping monks on the path in front gradually became blurry, and they vanished one after another. "I will." Sakura revealed a smile. "After I impart, think of an idea to leave the Buddha realm, so you don't die here." Sakura was solemn. He put his palms together and bowed. "Much thanks, senior brother." Brahma Buddha's voice rang out. "As for son of Qin, you need to compensate him. He has undertaken a very big danger for you. Other than that, take all the shit on your head. I'm indebted to your teachings." Sakura Buddha hesitated for a moment. "May I dare to ask, senior brother, how big is that shit?" "Bigger than you can imagine." Outside the dilapidated monastery, the third eye on Qin Mu's forehead was half open and half closed. With this eye, the divine treasures of the God Path and the divine treasures of the Devil Path actually harmonized strangely, and they gradually unified together. In the past, he only used the divine treasures on one side. If he used the divine treasures of the God Path, he would need to close the divine treasures of the Devil Path, vice versa. If he tried to use the divine treasures of both paths together, the God and Devil nature would clash. There were many types of vital chi. There was God vitality, Devil vitality, Demon vitality, Dragon vitality, Phoenix vitality, Buddha vitality, Tao vitality, and if they were separated in detail, there would be even more types. For example, the four great spirit bodies of eternal peace could also be classified into four big categories. Each category also has smaller and different categories. God vitality and demon vitality were two opposing categories. They couldn't exist alongside each other. When vital chi with the God attribute encountered the vital chi of the devil attribute, they would erase each other. And now, when Chinmu opened this eye, he actually managed to unify God and devil into one. Outside the monastery, the Buddhas muttered to themselves. Suddenly, Yamaraja Buddha said with a smile, "Son of Buddha Jian Kong, we aren't going to fight for it anymore." Son of Buddha Jian Kong was suddenly stunned and he bowed. "I've received Buddha's decree." After saying that, he fell back. Sogura Nogaraja Buddha also summoned back his disciples. "Not fighting today." The other Buddhas of the other heavens also summoned back their own disciple and expressed their intention of not fighting. The four elements are vanity, and not fighting is fighting. Let him be and let others fight for it. Even though numerous sons of Buddha were bewildered, they still listened to the orders and returned back to the side of the Buddhas. These Buddhas only summoned back the disciples of the Buddha realm. The numerous sons of Buddha that were left behind were all young talents that the celestial heavens had sent into the Buddha realm to seek knowledge. There were also disciples taken in by the Buddhas of the celestial heavens, and they were all eager to make a move. Dharma King Mo Lun said with a smile, "Numerous senior brothers are magnanimous, however, this is a Brahma Buddha's true scripture of the Emperor's throne. How can we not get it? If we don't, wouldn't it benefit the outsider?" Another Buddha said with a smile, "That's indeed the case." Another few Buddhas chipped in, "Two senior brothers are right. We can't just give it that easily to an outsider." Dharma King Mo Lun chuckled, Crown Prince Yu Guang, is your injuries fine now? He had used Dharma to treat Crown Prince Yu Guang, so his injuries had basically healed. He had a fervent gaze and he looked at Qin Mu with blazing fighting spirit. Layperson Qin actually sneaked an attack on me. Disciple really wants to compete with him again. Dharma King Mo Lun said with a smile, people had already say life and death will be disregarded. If you only think about victory and defeat instead of life and death, I'm afraid you will be at a disadvantage again. Crown Prince Yu Guang was astonished. Dharma King Mo Lun looked at the other sons of Buddha. You are all successors of the Buddhas here. You should know only of life and death and not victory and defeat. You don't have to pay particular attention to the dispute of Dharma. Crown Prince Yu Guang, Crown Prince Mo Jie, Princess Po Long, Crown Prince Fu Yun, do you guys understand? These few people he had mentioned were the Crown Prince and Princess of the Buddhist countries the celestial heavens had constructed in the Buddha realm. With the Buddhist countries standing in numbers in the Buddha realm, most of them were already power of the celestial heavens. Meanwhile, these few crown princes and princess were the outstanding ones among the younger generation. Not only did they cultivate along with the Buddhas, they even enter the celestial heavens from time to cultivate even more profound ultimate arts. Everyone nodded their heads in acknowledgement. Crown Prince Arai Guang said with a smile, Senior brother Yu Guang's abilities aren't weaker than mine, he will definitely have success in a single move. I'll just wait here and see the head roll. Crown Prince Yu Guang walked forward and a moon appeared behind his head. That was his sword chi and sword light. Wherever the moonlight shone on, moonlight and sword light would fill the sky, and it was truly very powerful. Not to say the lower bound, even in the heavens of the Buddha realm, it was also rare to see such exquisite sword skills and techniques. Crown Prince Yu Guang looked at Qin Mu with a flickering gaze. You sneaked an attack on me and almost took my life. Now that I'm prepared today, I shall subdue the devil. Behind his head, the bright moon was like a wheel and the sword light was like a huge pillar of light as it rushed at Qin Mu. At the same time, rays from the moon shone in all directions and those were all sword light. They actually changed direction in the air, and it was obvious he was prepared to cut off Qin Mu's path of retreat. His sword skill was boundless and could be said to be a special skill. With moonlight filling the sky and sword light dancing in the clouds, it was much more exquisite and zen when compared to Yu Yuan Chuyu and Yu Yuan Chuyun's sunset sword skill. Qin Mu opened all three of his eyes and he stretched a finger out. His sword pellet trembled with a hum and a thick sword pillar burst forth from the sword pellet. That was a pure spiral sword form, and 8,000 swords flew together while revolving around one another. Even though they had used the same move, the shape of each and every sword was different. The sword pillar was 3 feet thick and 50 yards long. With a sweep, the moonlight that filled with sky was completely shattered. When I didn't exert all my power, you really think I can't beat you to death? Qin Mu took a step forward and Overlord Body 3 elixir technique exploded. 8 voices of ancestral dragons gave off 8 kinds of abnormal sound. With his sword fingers stabbing out, the sword pillar pierced straight through the moon behind Crown Prince Yu Guang's head. The 8,000 swords swirled and that bright moon broke into pieces. The sword pillar pressed down and Crown Prince Yu Guang's body was crushed into smithereens. Monk Mingxin jumped in shock, and he shrunk back his head. Cult Master Qin has killed again. This is bad. I really don't know why Rulai wanted to send him over. I cannot mediate this kind of incident. Qin Mu surveyed the surroundings, and his gaze swept past several hundred sons of Buddha. He raised his hands to grab the sword pellet, and he said indifferently, once my murderous intent is invoked, I will find it difficult to control myself, the evil thoughts in my heart will pour out, and I will have the heart to slaughter. Dao friends, you can all come up together to suppress the devil in my heart, accomplishing your achievements and virtues. These several hundred sons of Buddha felt a chill in their hearts, when they got swept by his three gazes. Only all kinds of Buddha voices rang out endlessly as they all opened up their divine treasures involuntarily, releasing their auras out with an explosion. That was because they felt the murderous intent in Qin Mu's gazes, and they thought that Qin Mu's murderous intent was directed at them. They got swept by Qin Mu's gaze and they involuntarily released all their auras, making them seem somewhat nervous, and throwing the awe-inspiring authority of their own families. However, he could also use this chance to take a look at the techniques and divine arts that everyone cultivated. Some of the sons of Buddha had clouds above their heads, and there were great Buddhas sitting on the clouds. Some of them had rays behind their heads, and 100 of delicate-looking Buddhas swirled around their heads in the ray, chanting with Buddha voice. Golden springs poured out under some of their feet, and the golden springs were covered with lotus flowers, allowing him to stand in the center of the red lotus. Some of them cultivated abnormal techniques of Buddhism, and cultivated 3 heads and 6 arms. The faces were like yaksha, and some of them were untainted by dust, being covered in a sacred light. Their spirit weapons also had all kinds of strange forms. There were pipa, umbrella, treasured beads, bow and arrows, treasured swords, vajra scepter, golden truncheon, and etc. There were also some people that had cultivated strange beasts into weapons, using their vital qi to control the strange beasts to hurt people. The 20 heavens of Buddhism had different Buddhas on every heaven, therefore the techniques were all different. And other than the techniques of Buddhism, numerous ultimate arts from the celestial heavens were also forced out by Qin Mu's gaze. Under the gaze of his third eye, all cultivation, realm, could be seen clearly. These son of Buddhas weren't figures like Qi Jiui was a noble of the celestial heavens, and what he cultivated was an emperor's throne technique. Even a provincial governor of Yudu like Lu Li had to be respectful, and not haughty to him. Even though the sons of Buddhas were from the celestial heavens or related, they had never got in touch with Emperor's throne technique. Emperor's throne's technique wasn't readily available everywhere after all. Otherwise, the celestial heavens wouldn't have sent them forward to try and learn Brahma Buddha's Emperor's throne true scripture. How daring! Dharma King Mo Lun was furious and he shouted, "How dare you kill a person in my Buddha realm, you are truly a devil." Qin Mu paid no attention to him, and he pulled back his gaze. He lowered his head and muttered as he looked at his hands. Even when I fought with Qi Jiui and Jahwali, I had never opened all 3 eyes before. I don't know which step have I cultivated to. Dharma King Mo Lun was slightly stunned, and he was about to blow up when Sakura Buddha's voice came from the dilapidated monastery. Junior brother Mo Lun, calm down. Deaths are bound to happen during fights between disciples. Could you be the one going down to fight? The life of a person is merely living in a mortal body. Now that Crown Prince Yu Guang has shed his mortal body, he's free now, and that's something to be joyous about. The rules have been set. Let the sons of Buddhas challenge layperson Qin. Whoever that wins shall take the last placing and enter the monastery to learn the Emperor's throne's true scripture. Dharma King Mo Lun's fury couldn't be contained, but he endured it. He thought to himself, Sakura Buddha is standing up for this brat. To think he could even say something this shameless. However, since Sakura Buddha had spoken, he didn't dare to neglect his words and thought to himself. The abilities of this brat from the lower bound sure isn't weak, however, he's truly overestimating himself by challenging all the sons of Buddha. Brahma Buddha's Emperor's throne true scripture is important, it's not good to fall out now. I should get the true scripture first. In the dilapidated monastery, Sakura Buddha, who was comprehending the Emperor's throne true technique, gave a grunt. It wasn't him that had spoken to stop Dharma King Mo Lun. He was currently comprehending the true scripture, so why does he have the time to take notice of the outside world? Who is imitating my voice? How similar. That's right, it must be senior brother Brahma. Only he can imitate my voice so that others couldn't differentiate. Sakura Buddha raised his eyebrows. This should be the first shit, right? And it's even rubbed on me by senior brother personally. Hope that's the only shit. Crown Prince Arai Guang of the Celestial Heavens is here to subdue the devil in your heart. Crown Prince Arai Guang took a step forward and the sun shone brightly behind his head. He said indifferently, "You are from the lower bound. Lower bound, a place of poverty, to have a rare talent, you are excused for being conceited and contemptuous." Qin Mu didn't raise his head to look at him. Instead, he continued to look at his hands and thought to himself, "Granny Sai and the rest always wanted me to seal this eye, yet if I seal this eye, it also made me unable to know how much my abilities have improved. Exactly how strong is my true power? I can finally know now." He suddenly gave a few shudders. He was shivering from excitement. He could finally unleash his full power at ease and attack without care. He could finally not worry about bringing too many troubles to his friends and family, because his desire for destruction and his destructive power was too strong. He could finally let himself free and return to being that young boy of Great Ruins that wasn't afraid of anything in the world. The youth of Great Ruins only need to act accordingly to the rules of Great Ruins. All other rules were merely restrictions placed by the outside world. They were unrelated to the youth of Great Ruins. Cake. Ha 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 ha. Qin Mu laughed and his laughter grew louder and louder. Crown Prince Arai Guang frowned slightly and he said calmly, "I'm Crown Prince Arai Guang, the Highness of Sunlight Buddhist Country. I'm a fellow student of Crown Prince Yu Guang in Sword Palace of the Celestial Heavens. We have learned sword together, and our friendship is very deep. Stop nagging, if you miss him so much, I shall send you down to accompany him." Qin Mu smacked down with his outstretched hand and the sword pellet suddenly expanded. When it exploded, countless flying swords soared out, and as though they were clouds covering the sky. The sun behind Crown Prince Arai Guang's head suddenly exploded and he laughed. "I've been waiting a while." The sun behind his head emanated flames, and it was different from Crown Prince Yu Guang's moonlight sword. His sword brought along pure yang true fire and shone like a sun, incinerating everything with a slash. His sword light was hidden within the flames and the sunlight, so dazzling that one couldn't open their eyes to see his sword. Great Sun Divine Sword. His divine sword clashed with Qin Mu's sword rain, and in an instant, countless clattering rang out, and Crown Prince Arai Guang was astonished. He immediately felt that his sword move was being broken. There are 3 moves in his sword skill. No, 4 moves that I have never seen before in the basic sword skills. The astonishment in his heart was beyond what words could describe. 4 basic sword skills. Not to say 4 moves, even 1 basic sword skill could make all the sword skills in the world have to be reshuffled. The changes that were added was uncountable. Much less 4 moves. Which also says any of my sword skill in his eyes are full of flaws. Fear arose in Crown Prince Arai Guang's heart, and an idea was quickly formed in his mind. Since the sword skills of the lower bound have improved so much, the sword skills of the Celestial Heavens is basically unable to fight against him. I cannot use sword skills. As long as I use sword skills, they will all be full of flaws. Only by using knife skills or spells can I fight against him, otherwise, I'm already dead. That's right, why aren't I dead yet? He saw Qin Mu's 8,000 swords were like a cloud and the swords in the clouds were like swimming fishes. They executed all kinds of different sword moves and passed by his body without laying their hands on him. Crown Prince Arai Guang was stunned and he looked down. He saw his corporeal body was like a broken sieve. There were bloody holes that opened up the front and back of his body. His mind was slightly giddy, and he raised his hand to touch his head. One of his fingers sank into his head. He touched the back of his head, and the back of his head was a small hole. It should have been a flying sword, that had pierced into the heart of his brows and penetrated out from the back of his head, leaving behind a trace. In that case, my primordial spirit has already been killed by him. Crown Prince Arai Guang swayed and he collapsed on the ground. Chinmu's figure passed by his collapsed corpse, and he didn't know that Crown Prince Arai Guang was thinking so much before he died. After this battle today, there will be no more sword cultivators left in the Buddha realm. The youth of Great Ruins laughed loudly. 8,000 sword pressured down like clouds, and they seemed to be attacking all of the sons of Buddhas at once. In an instant, nearly all of the sons of Buddha reacted involuntarily. Qin Mu's 3 eyes moved fast as lightning to sweep past the son of Buddhas that were defending against his sword skills. About 100 of them executed sword skills to defend against his sword skills. As for the other sons of Buddha, the divine arts and the spirit weapons were somewhat different, and there were quite a number of son of Buddhas that had extremely high cultivation. For example, there were Crown Prince Mo Jie, Princess Po Long, Crown Prince Fuyun that Dharma King Mo Lun had mentioned. There was also son of Buddha Pu Jiao, son of Buddha Kong Xiong and the rest that had been debating with Devil Ape Zhong Kong. Their abilities were also extremely superior. More of the sons of Buddha had cultivated techniques of the celestial heavens and their attainments regarding the techniques of Buddhism weren't high, thus there was 100 young expert that had cultivated sword skills. Suddenly, Yamaraja Buddha couldn't bear to watch any longer and he closed his eyes. He said to the other Buddhas, "Let's go, we can't look at this place any longer, we can't see blood flowing into a river." Sogara Nogaraja Buddha and the rest also nodded their head. It's indeed unbearable to watch. After they said so, they brought their own disciples to fly up and leave this place, returning back to their respective heavens. Son of Buddha Jian Kong sneaked a glance back and he was stunned. In the battlefield in front of the dilapidated monastery, blood light appeared, and that was 100 rays of blood light. 100 sons of Buddha that cultivated sword skills had their sword skills broken in a split second and their primordial spirits, or corporeal bodies were slain just like that. Son of Buddha Jian Kong's heart felt fear and his limbs turned ice cold. He was speechless. In this hurried glance, Qin Mu had already gathered his swords back into a pellet and transformed the pellet into a knife. Splitting the long knife into 2, his footsteps moved irregularly and as fast as lightning. His body was sometimes left, sometimes right, sometimes front and sometimes back. His knife was also so fast that the naked eye couldn't catch anything. Heads rolled as he raised the knife and bodies were split into halves. The 2 knife lights in his hands were like long dragons moving around unhindered with wide arcs. Suddenly, a gate opened behind him and revealed the dark Yudu. That gate moved along with his body and wherever the gate swept past, sons of Buddha had their primordial spirit swallowed up by this gate before they even had a chance to react. Only empty shells were left. Son of Buddha's scalp crawled and his body was trembling. He saw the long knives in Qin Mu's hands transforming into a long spear, which stabbed Princess Po Long. With a jolt of the spear, that sweet and charming Princess Po Long was split into pieces. Next, Qin Mu stabbed the spear into the ground and countless flying swords scattered out to transform into a huge bell to cover him. It surrounded him and swirled furiously to block down the divine arts and spirit weapons from the other sons of Buddha. Qin Mu attacked furiously in the bell, and every punch and every kick was very clear. Violent power reached outside through the bell and shattered all the bones of the sons of Buddha that had come to fight in close combat with their battle techniques. Jian Kong, no need to look anymore. Yamaraja Buddha sighed and said, "If you look some more, your Buddha heart will be affected." Son of Buddha Jian Kong was astonished and he wanted to say something. However, his throat was parched so he couldn't say anything. After wetting his throat, his voice was still slightly hoarse. "My Buddha, how can the Buddhas tolerate layperson Qin for starting such a massacre?" What else can we do if we don't tolerate it? Yamaraja Buddha said with a low voice, I've met him in Yudu before. Back then, when I was in Yudu, and wanting to enlighten the damned souls there, I met him. I thought he had already died, but I didn't expect he's still alive. He seems to have forgotten what had happened when he was a toddler. It's been 19 years. Son of Buddha, Jian Kong followed Yamaraja Buddha to leave Brahma heaven, and this son of Buddha was very puzzled. He thought to himself, what had happened when layperson Qin was a toddler? Why would my Buddha meet him in Yudu? Why doesn't layperson Qin remember? He had a lot of question, but Yamaraja Buddha didn't breathe a word. He was willing to say anything more. Furthermore, Yamaraja Buddha also left in a hurry, and he didn't seem unable to stomach the sight of Qin Mu slaughtering the sons of Buddha. Instead, he seemed to be wanting to escape from Brahma realm as soon as possible to prevent himself from being implicated. My Buddha knows a lot of secrets, but he isn't willing to tell me. Is layperson Qin really that scary? He thought to himself. In front of the dilapidated monastery on Brahma heaven, Qin Mu's body was hard to be seen by the naked eye, so all of the sons of Buddha executed divine arts like Buddha eyes and heavenly eyes. Only then were they able to catch his figure. His speed was too fast. He was like flickering light and passing shadows. All kinds of sword skills, divine arts, knife skills, spear skills, fist skills were executed by him. Furthermore, they were executed as he was running at an extreme speed, making them unable to react. Son of Buddha Kong Seong roared, and his golden body was like a four-faced Buddha that had 4 heads and 8 arms. He flew in the sky to contest with Qin Mu, who was flying towards him. The two of them passed by each other quickly in the air and fought speed with speed. Son of Buddha Kong Seong was 26 feet tall, and his body was incomparably sturdy. Yet it was Qin Mu who was pressuring down on him as they flew in the air. In mid-air, the clash of the fists was like rumblings of thunder. The other sons of Buddha flew into the air, and were ready to encircle Qin Mu when golden blood sprayed down from the sky like rain. Son of Buddha Kong Seong's qi and blood had erupted, and explosions rang all around his body. His skin ruptured and fresh blood poured out. When he clashed with Qin Mu, his qi and blood boiled from the attacks, and since his corporeal body couldn't contain so much qi and blood, the violent qi and blood had surpassed the limits of his body, and thus, he died from his body bursting apart. When the other sons of Buddha were ready to encircle Qin Mu, they saw son of Buddha Kong Seong's tattered body falling from the sky. Those sons of Buddha that were rushing into the sky suddenly saw sword light flashing in mid-air, and they were astonished. They hurriedly executed their divine arts to bombard the sky. However, they saw sword light that was like an ocean of blood scattering down. Sword of founding emperor, sea of blood. Violent qi and blood swept over with the sword light, and swords were like dragons in that sea of blood, traveling back and forth without restraint. Some sons of Buddha held onto their throats, and some blocked the heart of their brows as their bodies sank into the sea of blood. On the sea of blood, Crown Prince Mo Jie stepped on the waves with lotus under blooming under his feet. He held onto a lotus flower to block Qin Mu's attacks. Whoosh! Qin Mu turned around and his clothes fluttered in the wind, turning his back towards him as he wielded his sword. Crown Prince Mo Jie saw an opening and was about to attack when the sea of blood parted. A pitch-black gate passed through his body. Crown Prince Mo Jie was stunned and his body slowly sank into the sea of blood. His primordial spirit was already dragged into Yudu by the gate of heaven influence. When the sea of blood dispersed, corpses fell off the sky. Compared to these young sons of Buddha that the celestial heavens had sent over, Qin Mu far surpassed them in battle experience and techniques. The sons of Buddha from the celestial heavens had lived in the Buddha realm for long periods of time, and there was usually no battles that would happen in the Buddha realm. It was so calm that it was like water in a dead pond. Living in such a kind of place, people were naturally happy and wealthy. They didn't have any desire and ambition. However, at the same time, peace had also caused their paths, skills and divine arts to regress. When paths, skills, and divine arts becomes useless, no one would bother to cultivate, and no one would bother to study more. They were at peace for too long, and there was no drive for them to fight their way forward. However, it was different for Qin Mu. Where he was living in, when he was a child, was the incomparably dangerous Great Ruins. Yet when he was still a child, he could already travel in Great Ruins where dangers laid everywhere. As for eternal peace, it was an empire that was brimming with life. The power of the empire was rising furiously, so there were bound to be enemies. However, they also have a strong rear. Paths, skills, and divine arts were seeing new changes every single day. With soldiers fighting in the front lines, divine arts practitioners were using paths, skills and divine arts for the people in the rear, changing the daily lives of the people. With the appearance of flying ships, flying cars, cannons and all kinds of strange and new things, the creativity of eternal peace was becoming stronger and stronger. All kinds of paths, skills and divine arts were also seeing rapid developments. As for Supreme Emperor Heaven, because the war was simply too bitter, they didn't have a strong rear, therefore the structure of the society wasn't complete. Without soil for creativity, their paths, skills and divine arts could never develop. Qin Mu was born in Great Ruins, and ever since he was young, he had been taught meticulously by the 9 elders. He caught up to Eternal Peace Empire's expansion, and the era where Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was carrying out his reform, thus having his current achievements. Furthermore, he was one of the leaders of the reform, and also the founder of the 18th Sword Form and Primordial Spirit Guide. He was an existence that had achieved taking his first step into entering the path with sword. Compared to these sons of Buddha that had not been through any storm by living in the Buddha realm, they were no longer people on the same level. Qin Mu raised his head to take a look, and he saw son of Buddha Pu Zhao currently rushing towards him furiously. This son of Buddha was a strong practitioner of celestial being realm, and he had almost died after Devil Ape Zhong Kong covered the light he had released. His debate couldn't defeat the Devil Ape, but his abilities were profound. His mudra skills overlapped as he sprinted over. Every move and every form, every punch, and every kick, they were all boundless and awe-inspiring. He executed the mudra skill he was most skilled in, and every mudra he released had the imprint of one kind of Buddha. Behind him, his primordial spirit was like a majestic Buddha sitting down, with numerous apparitions of Buddha in all size revolving around. They executed all kinds of mudra skills along with his mudra skill. Son of Buddha Pu Zhao sprinted and lightning came rolling in the clouds. Before the thunder could even arrive, the lightning had arrived first. The mudra skill he was executing now was the great divine art of Lakshmi Heaven, bathing all things in light. The sons of Buddha that could cultivate this kind of great divine art were also in the minority. His aura became stronger and stronger. His primordial spirit became stronger and stronger, until he was like an arrow on a stretched bowstring that had to release. Right at this moment, Qin Mu put his index and middle fingers together, transforming into sword fingers to tap on the heart of his brows. His sword fingers stabbed forward. The first form of Calamity Sword, opening Calamity. Son of Buddha Pu Zhao had already accumulated to his limit, and he couldn't help shouting when he saw a sword light flying in his face. The apparitions of the Buddhas behind him burst forth with power and struck 10,000 mudras forward. Qin Mu turned around and left, leaping down from the sky and landing on the ground. He was slightly bewildered. Strange, after I execute this divine art of the sword path, my vital chi would be more or less exhausted. Why do I feel that my vital chi is still incomparably abundant as though the water in a well? It seems to be never-ending. He felt his vital qi was always situated at its peak and could never be depleted. After fighting so long, he had nearly used all his divine arts and battle techniques once, and even executed great divine arts that required a large amount of magic power several times, yet his vital qi was not depleted at all. What was even weird was he could even felt his vital qi cultivation rising rapidly. This was completely going against logic. Next, he immediately discovered where the problem was. That was the third eye in the heart of his brows. Every time he killed a person, there would be boundless vital qi flowing out from this eye to flow throughout his entire body. It seemed like a reward, and the more people he killed, the more generous the reward would be. Strange, this eye indeed has a big problem. Kai. 10 miles of sword light pierced through son of Buddha Pu Zhao's head. The light was extremely dazzling and lighted up half of the sky. And even though that bathing all things in light from son of Buddha Pu Zhao had overflowing power, it landed on emptiness, as Qin Mu had already executed heaven-pilfering divine legs to move far away from that place. Son of Buddha Pu Zhao had a blank gaze and he collapsed. Behind him, the sword light suddenly pulled back and transformed into a tiny sword pellet, which swirled and landed down from the sky. Before it landed down, the sword pellet suddenly expanded and transformed into 9 long dragons. With the heads of the dragons facing downwards, their tails coiled together, and they covered down on a son of Buddha like a huge cover. In 9 dragons' divine flames shroud, flames and sword light burst forth and minced up that son of Buddha before turning him into ashes. At the same time, Qin Mu, who had landed on the ground, raised his hand and the 9 dragons' divine flames shroud came flying over while shrinking rapidly. When it landed in his hand, it had already transformed into a huge hammer. Qin Mu roared angrily and flames rushed into the sky behind him like an erupting volcano. The hammer in Qin Mu's hand swung forward and he smashed with all the force in his entire body, smashing into the chest of a son of Buddha that was rushing over. The instant he smashed the hammer out, the muscles in both his legs tightened and he suddenly rushed forward. The chest of that son of Buddha caved inwards from the smash, and he flew backward with the huge hammer. The trees on both sides passed by like flickering light and passing shadows, while the trees behind him also exploded with bangs as he crashed into them. Yet in the next instant, Qin Mu came to his front and stretched his hands out to grab the handle of the hammer. The huge hammer transformed into a long spear like flowing water, and he lifted that son of Buddha up with the tip of the spear. With a jolt, that son of Buddha split into pieces. "Don't fight alone." Crown Prince Fuyun shouted sternly, "Everyone, gather together, come to my side, let's use Buddha's divine art to purify him to death." Most of the Buddhas that had survived were currently chasing Qin Mu, throwing all kinds of divine arts and spirit weapons at Qin Mu. Yet it was hard for them to catch traces of Qin Mu. When they heard the words, they came to a realization and they all gathered towards Crown Prince Fuyun. The sons of Buddha suddenly formed a human wall, as they stepped on one another's shoulders to stack up on each other. There was a total of 64 of them. Buddha eyes, awaken. The 64 sons of Buddha put their palms together. Some of them had 3 heads and 6 arms, some of 2 sides on one body, some of them had the true form of Wisdom King, some of them had the bodies of Arhat, and all of them executed their Buddha eyes. Sweeping away the miasma of the demon, subduing the demon and devil. Their voices resonated loudly and everyone's auras were linked together. They were like an iron bastion, and their imposing manner was like a city. Swoosh! Buddha light gathered into a flood to shake the mountains. They caused the space to vibrate non-stop, as they shot towards Qin Mu at once. Instantly, the Buddha light was incomparably intense and the Buddha voice was incomparably loud. Wherever the Buddha voice passed by was turned into dust by the vibration. Just after Qin Mu flicked that son of Buddha to death, He shook the spear to change it into a huge tortoiseshell shield to block in front of him. Boom. His body trembled violently, and he flew into the air along with his shield. The shield in front of him was formed by 8,000 swords, and at this point, they could no longer hold up their shield form. The flying swords were vibrated by the Buddha light, and they crumbled right afterward. Qin Mu gave a grunt, and he puked out a mouth of blood. His body was blown out of this island on the golden sea of Buddha light, smashing him onto a mountain peak that had appeared on the golden sea. Crown Prince Fu Yu and the 64 sons of Buddha flew into the sky, and they came to the sky above the golden sea. In midair, all of them shouted in unison, "Dharma is boundless, Arhat descending to the lower bound." Twang! The Buddha light in everyone's eyes shone intensely again, and all of the Buddha light gathered together before bombarding towards where Qin Mu had crashed into. "You guys only dare to rely on your numbers. Do you think I'm scared of you?" Before Buddha light could even come to that mountain peak, they saw mountain rocks exploded from the peak of the mountain. Qin Mu rushed into the air, and his hair was let down on his shoulders. With both of his hands in front of him, he clutched a strange mudra. With the mudra out, his 3 eyes became brighter and brighter. His right eye had pure yang true fire, and his left eye had pure yin true fire, yet both of them couldn't be compared to the 3rd eye on the heart of his brows. In the 3rd eye on the heart of his brows, the formation markings of a butterfly-shaped wings gradually flowed out. It spread open its wings like a butterfly emerging from cocoon. This vertical eye was becoming more and more demonic. Suddenly, the mudra on Qin Mu's both hands was completed, and his hands suddenly swung backward while his head shot forward. With a rumble, 3 beams of light shot out from all 3 of his eyes. The Buddha light collided with the divine light from his 3 eyes, and the human wall formed by the 64 sons of Buddha in midair suddenly crumbled. Broken limbs fell from the sky. Satu, Mohi Ba He. Qin Mu was planning to defeat all of them in one fell swoop, when cryptic Yudu language came from his mouth. He couldn't help being startled. What's happening? Why did I suddenly speak Yudu language? Even though he thought that way, he suddenly chuckled and said, "He, the sacrifices are enough now, the souls of these baldies ain't that bad." Qin Mu stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. He suddenly became alarmed. "That's not right. I didn't think of doing that. What's going on with me? Evil creature." Suddenly, a booming voice rang out as a Buddha flew through the air with his hands pressing down. "You are truly a devil that's incorrigible. Buddha is now angered, and I shall wipe you out from existence. You can't win, right?" Qin Mu said with a smile, "If you can't win, return my body to me. Let me show you how to tear him apart." When he said this, he felt a chill running down his spine. These words were clearly said by him, yet they were clearly not what he was thinking. This video will end here.